Good morning and welcome to the Festival of Storytellers, Chapter 3. I am Gaccetta and I am your hostess for this morning's roundtable, day 3 of this super virtual book event that Reader's Magnet is now putting on for the third time. We're just really very, very happy about Reader's Magnet. Taking the advantage of exposing and allowing all of us authors to promote ourselves and our books. And this whole experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors. We are live from each of our homes, and we would like to take advantage of everyone joining us to join the Reader's Magnet stage. Check out our booths, check out our videos, our blogs, buy our books, and the roundtable discussions are twice a day at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern. And on Saturdays and Sundays, you can enjoy the author of the hours with each of the many of the authors that have come for this. This year is a little different. In the first 2 years, there were a lot of authors, and it was just pretty interesting. But this year, the number of authors that Reader's Magnet has allowed into the Festival of Storytellers is 70. The first year we had over 200, and in TFOS 2, we had 150. But at 70, they are able to give each of us the opportunity to truly promote ourselves to the maximum with what they have available. So let me tell you a little bit about me, and then we'll meet those that have joined us this morning. My name is Gaccetta. I have 2 books. My first book is One Caregiver's Journey. And One Caregiver's Journey is about my 9.5 years of caring for my mother before she passed away in my home 5 years ago at the age of 102. I took care of her for a decade. And that is kind of like the handbook for caregivers. It is a journal, and it's just a good book. It's an easy read and it's a good book. But from that book came my cookbook, which is Generations of Good Food, which is 200 recipes from my mother's Italian family. And it's kind of goes from the novice to the very experienced baker. That's my story. Today we have with us Mr. Wilkerson, Clark, and Jenny. And so Clark, tell us about you.
Well,
Daniel's with
this
us.
is
I'm sorry. I just saw that. Okay, Clark, tell us about gig. Clark.
I retired a couple of years ago after 50 years in medicine. I took care of the world's best patients. None of them drank and none of them smoked. They all wanted to get better, and there was no heavy lifting. They were all about this big. I did intensive care with prematures, which leaves one a lot of time to meditate. Particularly, I was moving around and I've traveled a bit in working in mission hospitals. I was interested in being accosted by a 10-year-old Ghanaian boy who told me that Ghana had never been a colony of England. And I'm saying, yeah, I was 10 years old when I heard Kwame Nkrumah declare the republic. No, Ghana's never been a colony. And I sort of like, well, why do you speak English? Ghana's an English-speaking country. And it started me thinking about how the age of a country, the actual physical age of a country, predicts its politics. And that's what has created the first series. I'm in the middle of writing another series. The first series I call Old Men and Infidels. and they are, let's see, Outland Exile,
So
Exile's
don't,
Escape.
yeah, don't worry if your books are not too clear, because Lourdes and QR will actually have that in the
Yeah, I see.
Recordings.
They're too shiny.
in the captions. Yeah.
And Malila of the Scorch, and it's a classic trilogy. I'm interested in the historical fiction part because there's so much interesting turf. It's in a lot of ways writing lies, what I call writing this political fiction. Once you publish it, it's now history. You can't have things one way and then have them another way in the next book. You've got to go back and make sure that everything has internal consistency. And of course, in historical fiction, you're given an internal consistency, and you've either got to get it right or play in the shadows all the time.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Jenny, tell us about your book. Then we can get into our discussion.
My name is Jenny Ferns, and I was born in England and moved to Canada and now live in the United States. And when I retired, I thought I would write my memoir. And as I was writing my memoir, I wasn't quite sure how far to go back with my parents. And then the skeletons in the closet started rattling.
Oh boy.
If I was actually going to tell the truth about a few people, some of those people were alive and they might disown me. So what I decided to do was to write a fiction, but based on historical facts and based on the stories that my parents told me. And this is set in before, during, and after the Second World War in England. So the locations are London, and a country village outside London called Painswick, and Birmingham and Wales. So those are the locations, and it follows a family and how the war has affected their day-to-day living, their relationships. So it's called Ripple Effect because of the war. And if you don't know, where you can see there's an airplane that's dropping a bomb and it's causing a ripple in a pond, just like if you threw a stone in a pond, it would cause a ripple, and the effect just spreads far and far. So you've got a picture here of a mother and a child. So how the war affected a family and a mother and a child in everyday life. So it's based on some family stories. It's based on some facts that I had to dredge up from a lot of research, because it started before the war and I wasn't born before the war. And so I had to learn some facts. I mean, who were the politicians, what were people wearing, when did the war actually happen? Some of those details, you have to get it right, because otherwise.
Those are some of the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about exactly those things in terms of how you write historical faction. So can we hold your thought, and then you can tell us exactly what you did when we get there?
Tell me exactly what I did.
How you researched
from encyclopedias, from Google was very good, and so was Wikipedia. They got a lot of photos. Could you see what people were wearing at that time, and also anecdotes from people who were actually during the war, pictures, museums, archives, other books that I'd read. So I just put together the background facts, but then the creative stuff actually happened about the relationships and how they interact. That's almost like everyday stuff. But the facts, I had a whole spreadsheet with dates and what people were wearing and how my action was going on during that time. So I had to get all that right.
Right. Right, and that's very important.
And it was work. It was work. It was like doing history
Wait,
homework.
writing a book is work.
Oh yeah. And it's hard on the body too, sitting all that
Right,
time.
yeah. Mr. Wilkerson, good morning.
Good morning,
Tell-
everyone.
Tell us about you.
My name is Wil. Yes, my name is Wilkinson. I was born in Haiti, and moved here when I was 12 in the United States. And ever since, I've done my schooling up until I joined the military, and now retired. And during that process, I was also going through a divorce into which made it in the hands of these court judges at the courthouse. We're talking about family court. And it was sort of like a grueling battle, to which put me in position to have started writing this book. It's called I Know a Deadbeat Judge When I See One. And a lot of things that I was able to see at the courthouse and I write about, and as well as my 5+ year marriage, and a lot of things that I talked about uh, with regards to history and the court system that we have here, and how it's not good. It's working against parents, and there's a whole lot for everyone in that book to really understand the whole process and how everything is connected to the political system here, and how that is still affecting what we all have to go through. So that's basically all that I write about in my book, and it gives you a historical perspective on a lot of things.
Interesting.
It's on Amazon. Yes,
Yes.
it is. It is very interesting.
Yes.
So
I think pretty much everything's on
once you get
Amazon.
it, yeah, absolutely. So it is on Amazon, soon to be on Barnes and Noble, and I also have my website, www.deadbeatjudge.com. You can go on there, and
Yours is
the
the
link will
yours
also
is
take
the
you to where you can buy it.
yours is the new
And
book,
that's all
right?
I have.
It's just been out 10 days. Is that what I heard Sir John say? Your book is the new book that's just been out. So if it's published through Reader's Magnet, it'll be on all the online outlets and Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and a lot of other places. Daniel, can you hear us?
Power on. Bluetooth pairing.
Lourdes, do we have Daniel? Jake, do you know if we have Daniel? Okay, Jake's muted. Daniel is gone. Okay, so let's get on. Let's get started into our well, there's if Daniel comes on, we'll ask Daniel to tell us about his book. They're moving all of us around here.
Just moved chairs. That was magic.
Everybody's going someplace else here except me. We're going to talk about the elements that you need to consider when you write historical fiction, and it seems like most all of you have done that at this point. And so I have 10 facts of how we do this, and then please jump in and tell me what you've done or if you have a different perspective. But when you write historical fiction, excuse me, are you writing to share information, or are you writing to entertain? Do you have a particular event? Do you have an emotional connection or with that particular period of history? So what do your readers learn from your story about that time, or even about your history? And so you've all experienced that. You just kind of, like me when I wrote mine, although mine is mine is not historical fiction. Mine is the real live memoir that is day to day. But the most important thing, and Jenny hit upon this, is your research. If you're writing about historical, you want to be sure that the research, the time period, that even if it's something you love or don't love, but you have to find what is interesting and what is significant, because you'll be doing a lot of research. You'll be reading fiction, you'll be reading books written about that particular time period. In today's world, we have Google, which will give us all of the facts and information that we could possibly want regarding all of this. The third thing is the setting. Where does it take place? In historical fiction, your stories take place in a particular time. Now, I know that Clark and Wilkinson have both indicated that there's a lot of politics and political involved. So you need to research what was happening in the world as well as at that particular time. And the characters, and we spoke of this, the characters may be actual people who you give fictional names to, so that they don't come back and beat you up, or they don't figure out who they are, or whether you just, but they have to accurately represent someone at a particular time period. They're people that you believe existed during that time period. If you went back and did historical family kinds of things, that how did you research? How did they dress? They act? How did they speak? How did they live? I mean, they didn't live in the digital world that we live in today. So how did they live? How did they get from place to place? Did they go by buckboard? Did they go by car? Did they go by boat? And how did they get from one place to the other? The next thing we need to do is have a plot. You've always got to have a plot. So your story has to focus on the manners and the customs of a particular period of history. And they may and probably do involve real people and real events. I have had conversations and communications with one of Reader's Magnet's authors who wrote a historical fiction book about the cowboys, the good guys and the bad guys of a particular town in Montana during the cowboy era. And it's about the cowboys, it's about the Indians, it's about the new people coming in to settle. And it was just kind of an interesting thing. And he wrote it, his first book, the first book on that period of time, was actually entitled that town and the massacre in that town. When he republished the book, he completely changed the title because it had been discovered that some of his facts were not correct. Some of the ancestors of the people who were in that town at that time took particular offense over how their relatives were portrayed. And so his second book was still about the historical fiction, but he had to make a bit of differences. So his plot kind of changed on the second book. Is there conflict? Are there problems? Are there, what kind of conflicts and problems did your characters face? And are you, well, Frank, we know yours is a lie, but do they, how do they interact with each other? Is there conflict? Is there, will your readers be able to understand the reasons that there was conflicts? And then do they talk to each other? Do they have dialogues? Do they talk to each other? And then here again, I guess we go back to setting, but you have to be descriptive And Wilkinson, I would imagine you've been very descriptive in your book and captured the details of the time and the authenticity of your book and descriptive language when explaining unfamiliar historical events. And then do you have a theme? Do we have a theme about related to the life of the people, their political events, political aspirations, as well as their good versus evil? Is there good versus evil in these books? And is there a patriotism? Is there a political affiliated? And then finally is world building. When you write non-fictional history or historical fiction, excuse me, you write it in a way to remind your readers that they're reading about a very different time in the past and a different time period. And you have to be not only mindful of the language, but the customs, the family environments, the social and political structures, the physical geography of where you're writing about, the names of places, policy, religious observances, political affiliations. And again, the operative word to all of this is research. Those are the 10 points. And so let's have a free discussion on how you feel about that, what you did. QR?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all those 10 points you've cited, Ellie. Like without the other one, it's not gonna make a good historical fiction book. And if you're going to look at it, it's really research that's very important because you cannot mess up with history. If you're going to put something new or add something, you need to make sure that it's not far from reality, right? The theme, the plot, it sets the tone of what you're about to share. And of course, you need to be be certain with what's your purpose is in sharing or in publishing this material, right?
Correct.
Like
I
what?
mean,
Like, go ahead, Jenny.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I was going to say what you were laying out really was basically
What you
you
did.
have to think about in any book that you write, not just historical fiction. You still
Agree.
have to have
Very
have
true.
to have characters that are relatable. You still have to have conflict. You need to have an arc where people change. Hopefully, you need to have some purpose. You need to have themes. So that is the same as in any book. But getting the facts right, the background and the everyday details is very important. So you get the color of the play, the color of the time.
Well, and you
in
wrote
my book,
yours is a historical book.
it's definitely historical. It goes back, many, many years. And I think people might be curious about my book because I do talk about everyday living there. For example, that in those days you didn't have central heating and people use coal to heat their fires, to heat their houses, and one fire in the house. That was it. And the bedrooms were cold. Things like that. And
or a fire in the bedroom. When my mother was growing up,
if you were sick, you had a fire in the bedroom. Otherwise,
you had a fire in the bedroom, but the rest of the house was cold until everybody got up, and then the fires moved to another room.
That's in everyday life. If you're wealthy, you have maids who will light the fires throughout the house. But if you're an everyday person, and you have milkmen who deliver milk to the doorstep, things like that happen then that don't happen now. I just wouldn't think of that. So those little everyday details. And also because I'm British, I grew up with British slang, and now I live in the United States, and I wrote my book using British slang. So actually in my book, I have a glossary of terms where I translate it for the American or for the non-British people, so they know what they're actually talking about.
I was about to ask that. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do have another question for you. So what is it for you? What's the most difficult part of, writing a historical fiction book, Jenny?
The most difficult part was getting the facts right, particularly in a time when I wasn't alive. During when as the story progresses, it's into an era when I do remember things. But the getting the clothing right and what people were eating and what and the bombing of London and which areas were bombed. I had to do a lot of research and finding out which streets actually were bombed and what that looked like and how what that was like and for people living in that era.
Franz, you have a question?
I do. Since we're talking
Okay.
about research. Hi, everyone. By the way, I'm Franz. I'm also from Reader's Magnet and having a great time. Privileged to be here with everyone. I'm just curious though, part of research, or is it something that you already have in mind? For example, for Dr. Boutwell, he has a trilogy. Is it something you plan on? Like, I plan on making it a trilogy, or it just happens as you go along?
Clark?
Well, now you're going to make me embarrassed because I thought this was going to be a short story.
Oh,
And
Oh,
it
really?
kept growing. And then it was a book, and then it was 2 books, and then it was 3 books.
And then
The same
are you writing a
arc
second
that I
trilogy?
had imagined.
Is,
And I'm
are you
writing a
writing a
second
second
trilogy, but
trilogy?
I'm doing this very different. I'm writing the whole trilogy at once so that I don't have continuity problems. Again, if you publish something, that's now past. And the next book, you may have written yourself unknowingly into a corner by what is published in book 1 when you're working on book 3. And so if you write them all together, you can cheat. You can go back and change, the color of somebody's eyes if need be. But the arc, the basic story arc, was composed in an instant. It was very much based on this one idea I had from one kid in one backcountry town in Upper Ghana. And just writing that out was the whole story arc, and populating it with people so that that people cared about the story. Um, people only care when you populate it, and so the plot elaborates on the thesis. And so I had my 2 characters imagined within about 20 minutes of when I started writing, and they scampered up into my brain and lived there rent free for about 8 years before I wrote them out. And I can now sleep at night.
Did
I
you?
know, I can
So
relate
when
to
you
that.
wrote, when you wrote the 3rd book of your trilogy, did you tie it back to the first?
Power on. Bluetooth pairing.
Oh, absolutely. They're all, I mean, it's a single, and I mean, when you look at it in retrospect, it's a romance of 2 couples that come from diametrically opposed political philosophies, and world wars are happening around them, and they get lost and they get found, and they get lost and they get found. But I wanted to stress how age affected people's thinking about politics, but I also wanted these 2 to rub the rough edges off each other over a period of several books, and they were fairly rough. So it was a good deal of fun with these 2 characters because I like both of them, and they're eventually going to, I know they're eventually going to get together, but everybody advised me against this, by the way, because I said, well, I've got 2 middle-aged people. One is a young country that everybody disappears at 40, kind of Logan's Run-ish, but not the same at all. They're promised that they're going to retire. So when you're 17, you're kind of middle-aged. And the other country, for good and sufficient reasons, expects to live to be 170. So I took 2 middle-aged individuals, one 60 years older than the other. I picked up the young one, dropped dropped her into the old country, she was immediately captured by the old one, and they proceeded to try and kill each other over several hundred pages. Well, she tried to kill him, and he tried not to kill her. So that was, the setup, and they finally sort of figured out that they each had something to offer the other. But I do have a thesis, and that is that all good things that we think about in Western civilization, good food, good medicine, good transportation, abhorrence to war, all those good things give us a long-lived society. At the same time, they mean there are a whole lot of young kids. And in some countries in West Africa, the average age is 13. I've got socks older than that.
Are you
So
kidding?
you have this, no,
God.
I'm not. Niger is that country. Ghana is all the way up to 22. So you have this incredibly ignorant population that only has somebody else's story to believe. So
Yeah,
if
they don't
you're
have the wisdom
old,
of the old people. Wow.
yeah,
What's the name
they're
of what's
now
the name of your
becoming
book?
What's the
the
name of
name?
your
Old Men and-
trilogy?
Well, the series is Old Men and Infidels. The inaugural one is Outland Exile. Outland
Mr.
Exile.
Wilkinson, you know what? Let's hear how you put together your story about a courthouse.
Well, at first, it is a memoir. It was mostly about what went through my marriage with my ex-wife. That was the first thing that I started off until I started writing more and more about the judges in the courthouse and how, with all of the proceedings. I thought I was done after 60 pages until I realized that something was missing. I wanted that effect in the book. And then I started doing research on laws that have been passed and presidents that have instituted new laws and how the whole political process. During my research, I started learning more and more about those things. Then I started connecting the courthouse and marriage to everything that I've been learning. I've done a lot of Googling, a lot of articles to which we've talked about child support, custody matters. But then to me, it was still something missing. And I kept researching, and I started taking some free online college courses, into which I was enlightened by the things that I was learning. And going back to even the country where I'm from and where I was born, then I started connecting the two as to how my country came about to be what it is today. I mean, I'm talking about Haiti. And I started connecting to the things that politicians here in the U.S., the decisions they made and how their decisions have affected my country. Okay, so that was a point to be made, but not too much to talk about. So now let's go back to the courthouse. So, and I started talking about how, the progressive movement had changed a lot of laws in this country, and to which, the family structure that we had in the 1800s, how that's been affected. So this is where the book is really, really taking you, and to understand why parents go through all of the troubles that they go through today. It's because of all these laws and all these things. So this is kind of like the direction that my book takes you, and you'll be surprised as to some of the things that I started learning as well. I used to read books on Jane Austen, but it didn't appear to me that some of the characters to which she talked about in her books and how those characters, you can draw a parallel to how my wife's behavior been in the house and some of those things, and I start connecting. It's a journey, and it's very, very exhausting because even after publishing, and I'm still tired.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
and
not going to go away. And I think the nerve you hit for me is it is a journey. It is a journey. You know, my book is
It is.
entitled One
It is.
Caregiver's Journey, and it's over, and it's bare fact over 10 years. But all of the research that you put into it, all of the thoughts that we put into our works, indeed is a journey, and you learn so much, and just from listening to each of the three of you, how you have learned, what we gain and what we learn. And like Clark said, he's in his third book and he remembers something from the first book, and so he tries to scramble to figure out how to make it relative so that someone reading all three of those books are definitely going to tie them together in their mind. And in Jenny's book, you took so much care for clothing and how they looked and how they dressed and how they got around and how they spoke, and all of that. And
But it makes it authentic. So even though it's fiction, the characters and the story is fiction, it's got a realistic background, almost like a movie. It has to be right.
But it is fiction, but it's based on your history.
Correct.
Correct.
And other
the
people's
same,
Have you heard of Engram?
and other people's history.
the same with Mr.
Engram.
Wilkinson.
Mhm.
I hear somebody in the background. Is somebody want to talk? Clark, was that
Yeah.
you? Okay.
I would think that for an historical writer, Engram would be a lifeline. It's Engram, and it
Mhm.
looks at word frequency over time, like from about 1600 on in English. And so you find that there may be a blip in some arcane word that you have. I became aware of it when my first editor said, "Are you trying to make this a British book?" And confession here is I grew up in a American household that was mothered by a British Canadian, and so it's a vase, not a vase. It's either and either, and lieutenant and tomato, and I've gradually gotten rid of a lot of those, but there are a lot that I completely subconscious. I
Well,
didn't know.
I kept my British stuff in my British book because it's set in Britain. So I know
Yeah,
it,
because
all
it's
the
set in Britain.
you know,
But I very much wanted mine to be American because that's the politics I knew. That's all. And
yeah.
but I had to extirpate every single Britishism that I could find. Poking into holes to find out that I had inadvertently used a Britishism, and using Engram to help me decide whether it was American enough or not.
Mr. Wilkinson, did you bring in your Haitian roots? Or did you just keep going back to that courthouse and the judges?
Well, let me just say this: any parent having to go through the courthouse proceedings or anything else, whether it would be child support or custody, and this is one of the things where parents find themselves, is that they have this never-ending issue, whether it would be fighting with their significant other again and having to go back, and this is one of those things that I notice, and a lot of groups that I've joined, and when you hear their stories, it's just never-ending story of theirs. So that's the case with me, where I'm dealing with child support, and there's this constant piece of paper in the mail coming from them, and I have to ignore or don't even look at because it's like so annoying. And it got to a point of me thinking about how I was done wrong by the judge, and that's why I'm not able to see my two children.
Oh.
But I'm still fighting, and obviously, one of the reasons why you see I'm publishing my book is to talk about it and raise awareness for one, the people that would want to listen and read and understand this.
And your
this horror
your story is not unique. Your story is not unique. I worked in the human services, social services arena for a lot of years. And your story is not unique. Your story is going to resonate with men and with women all across this country. So your story, your story is not unique. So don't think that it's just your little, because it's not. What you're going through happens everywhere.
I agree, and this is why I'm part of these online groups, Facebook, you name it, and you hear a lot of parents and people constantly talking about their issues.
So speaking of,
this,
I'm sorry, go ahead. You're right. Facebook is a great place. Social media. Let's take a couple seconds to kind of you hit upon a nerve that Sir John had brought up before we started, which is let's try to get our social media handles out there and tell people where we are, where's our social media presence, because that's a wonderful way to push your book. Okay, Mr. Wilkerson, you talked about Facebook, and Facebook's a great place. Tell us about, are you on other social media? Okay, tell me.
Even when I was writing my book, I had already created my social media platforms, all of them, and you can find them on the at deadbeatjudge.com across the board. So that's where you'll find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere you name it. That's social media.
Are you on Twitter? Are you on Twitter?
Yes, I am.
Are you on Instagram?
I started using it. I get talking about. Yes, I am.
He's on all of them. At Deadbeat Judge, y'all.
I'm on. Yeah, at Deadbeat Judge.
Mr. Wilkinson, can you share to us the name of that Facebook group that which you're a part of?
Oh yes, there's a lot of them. There's one that's called the Child Support and Fatherless Crisis Hustle. That's a long name for you to remember. There's the other ones that I use. There's Dad Talks. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
They're very big. They even have their own TV station. There's
Power off.
Dads assisting dads. That's another one. You name it. It's also in my book. I listed all of them because I also made reference to them.
Bluetooth pairing.
Three I can remember. I believe there are other ones. Father's Rights. The list goes on.
Okay, Clark, are you on social media?
Well, yeah, I have a website, Old Men and Infidels, all one word.com. So that is actually a mixture of a whole bunch of things, excerpts from the books, links to buy the books, as well as observations. One of the terms that you meet in the books is CZ, means senior citizen, and it's a pejorative term by the one country for anybody over 40. And believe me, 40 is a distant memory to me. So so I have, observations of a CC, sayings of a CC, poems of a CC, and excerpts of the books, and some of the of the books that are published, of the books that aren't published, observations about stuff, as I feel the political scene requires of them. And so that's where I put most of my effort. I also have Old Men and Infidels books, separated Old Men and Infidels books on Facebook. And I have a presence on Twitter, which is Jesse Johnstone 7. That is my male protagonist, is Jesse Johnstone, and a youthful 76-year-old. And so I sort of use them at various times.
Okay.
Jenny, are you on social media?
Yes, I'm on Facebook. I also have another business. I'm also a realtor as well, which helps to fund my my book publicity.
Yeah, I mean,
but Jenny
pay
Phones,
for your habit.
Jenny Phones. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter, and I have a website, jennyphoneswriter.com, where you can buy the book. There's a link there to Amazon. So Amazon, and there's hardcover, softcover, ebook. And I did an audiobook too. I read it with my English accent.
How fun.
So
How fun is that?
yeah, right.
Well, I too I'm on Facebook. And my handle there is Ellie Gaccetta, but on Instagram, I am at Gaccetta Eleanor. I was thrown off last year, and so I had to recreate myself in February of this year. I was let back on Instagram, and now I'm plugging away at trying to get followers again. It's always fun. QR, do we have more time? Are we ready to wrap it?
Let's have Mr. DeWald, if his mic is working. Daniel?
Okay, and respond to me. What time would you like to be party? What session would you like to be in?
Okay, I guess his mic is not still working. All right.
My book.
There. All right. Jenny's book. Yes, Jenny. Where can they grab a copy of your book?
Amazon.com.
Amazon.
You have to put Ripple
Who's
Effect
that?
because of the war. You have to have the whole title.
Ripple Effect.
Because of the war is the whole thing.
All right. Great.
Ripple Effect.
And we have Clark Batwell, Outland
Well,
Exile.
Outlined Exile.
And
you know his.
I wear one book, and here are the other two.
Okay.
And
And yes,
Mr.
I'm gone.
Wilkinson? Okay, QR.
Mr. Wilkinson, any books to plug?
Again, my first book, it's on Amazon and soon to be on Barnes and Noble. And my website, you'll get more information on it. It's deadbeatjudge.com. And that's the title of the book. Have fun.
All right. Let's go around the table and ask for our takeaways for this session. Let's start with you, Jake.
Unmute Jake. Jake, you're muted.
Yeah, for some reason I can't seem to unmute.
There you are. Okay, there you are.
Yeah, thank you, Q, for the assist. So I just learned from all you guys that there's a lot to factor in terms of making that story, especially if it's historical fiction, right? And there's a lot of, and I'm looking at the series that's coming out right now, like series in Amazon. It's most of them are based in books. And historical fiction is definitely the core, the genre that we're looking at there. And so there's a lot. And hearing you, Ellie, with world building definitely draws me in, and that's not because I want to write. I like to do world building, but I get immersed, especially if the world building was set up really great. So yeah.
Okay,
Franz?
Oh, you're muted too, Franz. Unmute.
Yes, there we go. So my takeaway, the journey that our respected authors went through, is very much appreciated. I have now a deeper sense of appreciation to each of your masterpieces, and just nothing but high respect. And those that are watching us right now, for sure, um, now understand what each of you have to go through. We were just on the enjoying part. We were enjoying your books. But
Yes.
now, hearing this from all of you, there's a deeper sense of, we just don't think about the characters now, the authors themselves, what they go through. So thank you everyone for sharing those.
Yes.
Jenny,
Um,
what
go
what
Jenny.
go Jenny.
Oh, okay. I just, it's nice to hear different people's journeys and the different stories that come out from different perspectives, different countries, and how it's important to get the facts right. But basically, we're telling stories.
Super.
Let me
Clark?
have my turn. Oh, okay.
Oh, you want okay, have your turn.
Let
Have
me
your
have
turn.
my turn before I'll have Clark. All right. Mine is it's almost, it's all the same, regardless of what type of what genre you're writing. There's always that story that you want to share, that you want to impart to your audience, right? I was very touched when um Wilkinson was sharing his story and his purpose of writing his story, and you don't mess with the details because that's very important. And you need to have a very good premise of the story, create a very good picture in the minds of your readers. Right, that's it. Clark, it's your
I
turn.
think, yes, the important thing is the meticulousness of the research and getting it right. And then the getting it right gives you the right to now spin a story. If you haven't done the details right, you really haven't earned the right to tell people about the plot.
Agree.
Because it
True.
now
True.
becomes a bedtime story. So the meticulousness is your entrance exam.
True. Mr. Wilkinson?
Um, I think I've already said this. One of the things, one of the challenges that I've come across is having to go back into what you finished and the new things that you learn. How do you get to incorporate the new research into your book? And that was one of the challenges that I've come across. And I was able to go back into chapter 5 and try to fit in a story about Jane Austen's characters, comparing it to my ex-wife, or making the point that I wanted to make. And once I'm done, then having to go back to chapter 9 and 8 and incorporating these stories, that was very challenging because I come across how do I make words make sense, and eventually I did, and that's one of the takeaway for you and everyone else.
James?
Yes. One of the things that really curious me about is historical fiction is fiction. It is not a history book. So I'm just wondering, how can you delineate what is history and what is fiction? What is facts and what is fiction? Like, how many percentage of the book should be fiction, and how many percentage of the books should be facts? So I'm just wondering on that. And about the world building, which is very important, especially for Jenny. Like, you are creating a world that is different from us in our modern world. It's like, how are you going to put that world into our world? Like, when I'm reading that book, it's like I'm living in the 1950s, 1800, or how whatever part of history you are putting your readers in. So it's like, wow, it's really an exciting, genre. And we are so grateful for you all.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Lourdes, you're way back up there in the top. Did you want to give us your perspective?
All right, thank you for including me, Ali. I mean, this is something so interesting because, as James has mentioned, it is still fiction. Historical fiction is still fiction. So there might be a certain point or a line to cross where it's a history or historical fact and a historical and a fiction in some at some point. So it's kind of a great balance between having your imagination do the thing in incorporating history and of course fiction. So thanks
Right.
for having your insights shared with us.
Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to do was Daniel Duval, his Zoom wouldn't let him be part of us, but I'm hoping that he was able to listen to us. His book is, put that back up again, QR, so I could get that.
Yes.
What was it? You tell us. His book is Gray Feathers of what?
Yes, Gray Feathers, Led by Love of Country. It's also a history book. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry that he wasn't able to join us and we couldn't have another perspective and have some more information. I have thoroughly enjoyed moderating this panel and moderating being part of all of this. Again, the Festival of Storytellers, I would like to give just an enormous gratitude to the staff and the management for providing us with this opportunity to have a virtual book fair that is about us, the authors, and not about the publishers. If you've ever gone to any in-person fairs, book fairs, you will see that it's all about the publishers. And in Readers Magnets booths in these fairs, unlike others, they allow the general public to come in and peruse the books, ask questions. Their staff and management are well versed on all of our books. They can talk about us. They can talk about the books. They've got a ton of information that they learn. The last couple fairs that I've been to, there have been well over 100 and 130, 40 books. So they promote us. They promote us, and in the process, they promote themselves. And I am very grateful for that. Join us often. The roundtables are at 11 Eastern and 5 Eastern, Monday through Friday, the next 2 weeks. This is day 3. On the weekend, there'll be the author of the hours. I don't know if any of you are participating in the author of the hour. Join us. And from that, I would say stay well, be safe, and ciao for now.
See you
Bye,
later at
y'all.
5.